the camera does?
Yeah, the camera
Oh.
just, it's supposed to like focus on the speaker or like move around, but then it just shuts itself off from time to time.
Yeah. Kind of have his own little line of his own.
A little bit. All right, we're gonna get started with the remaining sections in C405. They primarily deal with controls for our lights. So, okay. So first I want to talk about logic, right? Because all controls, whether it's for lighting, HVAC, whatnot, it deals with logic, cold logic, okay? So here's an, kind of the textbook definition of logic. How you get through it. The way control systems apply logic is a conditional statement, also called an if-then statement, is a statement with a hypothesis followed by a conclusion. If this, then that. Okay, true is it false. Understanding code. So building code is written in a logic-based format. If you have this, then do this. Okay, or at least it really tries to be. It tries not to have sections open for interpretation, but it does allow that for various instances in controls. So basically, think about it, you're solving a logic puzzle, right? And there's many different types of logic puzzles, and a lot of them are in the code. Okay, so you just kind of have to recognize what logic puzzle you're looking at. But regardless of which one, they all arrive at the same place. What we want to be is compliance. Okay. So lighting controls, this got redefined. Electrical power and lighting systems and generation shall comply with the section. The lighting shall consist of lighting included when calculating the total connected interior lighting power coordinates with those two sections, so interior and exterior. And again, the exception, dwelling units now have their own section now. Okay, so no more for 2024, no more jumping back and forth between commercial and residential. The other thing is the mandatory part of it got removed, and lighting installed concern for walk-in coolers, freezers, refrigerated warehouse coolers and freezers. Those also got scrapped. So instead, it's just called lighting controls. But I want to stick with my Lord of the Rings theme here, so I kept getting off. But basically, it also got reworked. Basically, interior parking areas shall be provided with controls that comply with the interior parking control section. All other, that was updated, and then this was reworded so that lighting systems powered through the energy service for the building and building site lighting for which the building owner is responsible shall be provided with controls that comply with the control sections. Okay, so that's new because apparently power generation for some sites, you could dip into a different building's grid and then basically be like, this isn't part of the project. So that loophole is closed. So basically you're going to have lighting control, whether you like it or not. But lighting controls are not required and I believe this is the only change. Interior exit stairways, interior exit ramps, and exit passageways. Okay. The other thing that happened that I do not like, and thankfully they are changing after 2024, is that they remove LLCs. Okay, so LLCs is not defined in IECC 2024. It was kind of pitched as an alternative compliance path that has some issues with the way the lighting section is structured and written. But you can still use Lumino lighting controls to comply with all of the control requirements. Okay, it's just not explicitly stated. Okay. So here are the sections. The only thing note is dimming controls. This was renamed from light reduction controls. So 2024 basically fully acknowledges that the main commercial lighting type is LEDs. It's not fluorescent or compact fluorescent. So no more switching or stepping for our dimming. We just have continuous dimming because it assumes you're using solid or LEDs. Occupancy sensors. This got expanded. So there's more more sections that require it. So here's a list of all those. Computer room, data centers, the new one. Medical supply room and a healthcare facility is another one. Laundry washing area is another one. Telemedicine is the new one, and corridors is the last new one. Okay, so you have that space type, you're required to have an occupancy sensor in it. Okay. Now control function. So as I mentioned, the way kind of lighting code is structured is that you'll have a section defining the control type, and then a follow-up sections defining the control operation of that sensor. Okay. So if you're a warehouse, then proceed to the warehouse section. Okay. If you are an open office area with your plan, then you will reference the section with the open office area. We'll get to that. So again, this is kind of me rearranging code to kind of have it be step by step as you go through the design process. All other spaces previously listed, i.e. the ones that are required to have occupancy sensors, shall comply with the following. Turn off lights within 20 minutes after all occupants have left the space. They shall have manual on or controlled to automatically turn on lighting not more than 50% power. I don't think I've done an energy audit of a building with occupancy sensors that follows that requirement, where it stops it at 50%. Every building I've audited, it goes to full on. Now there could be high end trim, so it's going to 80, 85, 90%, but it's still going to full on. Okay, that's not technically how it's supposed to work. And then you shall incorporate a manual control to allow occupants to turn off all lights. Something to keep in mind is ready access. You're going to see that a lot in the controls section for lighting. Ready access refers to the ability to turn on and off the light, meaning I don't have to take a quiz. I don't have to jump up and down. I don't have to sing Pledge of Allegiance. I don't have to do anything. I just get to activate the switch and turn it off. Okay, that's ready access. Nothing is interfering. Yes.
So question on the automatically turning on to not more than 50% power. Does that mean that they start off kind of dim and get brighter? Or what does that mean?
So you have a space, open office area.
Yeah.
Or not open office. The conference room, right? You have a conference room, everyone's in there, you have a meeting, you leave, right? After 20 minutes, the lights go completely off because it's vacant.
Mhm.
Okay. So now you forgot your notebook, right? Laptop, pen, whatever. So you go back into the conference room, right? It's supposed to go to 50%. So of output. So it's gone from 100%, you know, say we're not doing high end trim, so 100% output. After everyone left, 20 minutes, 0% output. When you come back to get your laptop, notebook, or whatever thing you forgot, it's supposed to go up to 50%.
What takes
And
the
then
door?
you do occupant override.
Okay.
You decide that, hey, I'm actually going to stay in this space. I want more. Because the point of the occupancy sensor is to reduce energy, right? But where I have typically seen it used in the industry and application is for occupant comfort, where it's like, yes, turn it off when I leave the space, but when I come back to the space, turn it back on to the way I had it in the last set point that I used.
That's what ours does.
So that's typically what I see, but again, that's not what it's supposed to be. Exception. So here are the areas where you're allowed to override that and you don't need to do that, right? Where you're given the exemption. So corridors, interior parking areas, stairways, restrooms, locker rooms, lobbies, library stacks. And this is the big one that I think is exploited a lot. Areas where manual operation would endanger occupant safety or security. That's very broad, very vague, on purpose. Please do not abuse it. Okay, but I'm a warehouse. Okay, well, now we have some different requirements instead of those ones. Okay, so lighting in each aisleway shall be controlled independently of lighting in all other aisleway and open areas. Okay, again, this is 2024. Occupant sensors shall reduce lighting power automatically within each controlled area to an unoccupied set point of not more than 50% of full power within 20 minutes after all occupants have left the controlled area. Reason for this is an emotional connotation fix, right? We walk into the warehouse, everything is pitch black except where you are. It's kind of scary. Okay. So instead, we're going to say after 20 minutes, instead of going to full off, you're going to go to at least 50% power. You can go less than that. So if you want 30%, that's fine. But you go at least 50% of full power. Okay. And that's kind of a way to say, like, oh, there's something over there. I can see, I can kind of distinguish. It also helps with occupant comfort for contrast, right? Our eyes aren't having to constantly adjust to the light level in front of us and the light level in medium and the background. Lights that are not turned off by occupancy sensors shall be turned off by time switch control complying with the time switch control section. A manual control shall be provided to allow occupants to turn off lights in the space. Again, ready access. So there's an open office area in the warehouse. Okay, you treat it like an open office area. Okay. Further question you ask is the area less than or equal to 300 square feet? If yes, then you're going to refer back to the original section I mentioned earlier about the basic occupancy sensor control functions. If no, then you're going to comply with all the following. Your general lighting needs to be separated into the four zones where the floor area is not greater than 600 square feet. So if you're an open office area and you have 800 square feet, then you're going to need 2 separate control zones for your lights. General lighting in each control zone shall be permitted to automatically turn on upon occupancy within the control zone. General lighting in other unoccupied zones within the open office area shall be permitted to turn on to not more than 20% of full power or remain unaffected. Okay, so what that means is this is kind of lighting controls are shifting to more granular function aspects rather than just the entire space or the entire floor level, right? We're going down to the actual individual fixture. So that allows us to do different strategies and implementation of those strategies. So one of the things I've run into with the lighting controls is that, so if you walk into an open office area and you flip on the light switch, you expect all the lights to come on. Say you're the only person, you know, you're working on a Saturday, you go stop by or whatever, right? You expect all the lights to come on, but you don't need all the lights to come on, okay? But again, the emotional connotation, that's what we expect, okay? And so if we don't do that, we assume something's wrong. Maybe we've entered into a serial killer movie and we're in danger, okay? So basically what this says is, so when we do that, say we turn on the lights in our open office, we go to our desk, we start working, 20 minutes has passed, okay? The lights that detect us in our zone stay at the set point of occupancy, so full on. But all the adjacent zones that are connected in that space now must be reduced to 20% output or less, right? So we're saving 80% of our output, but we're leaving 20% because some people get scared of the dark, okay? So it also helps with the emotional connotation and being able to just kind of be familiar with that. We kind of have to transition our building occupants to get used to only having the lights on that we actively need, okay? The controls shall automatically turn off general lighting in all control zones within 20 minutes after all occupants have left the open plan space, okay? So that means that I'm done working on the weekend, I'm going home, the control zone next to the exit, so that's entrance, that comes on. The one I just left that I was working in, that stays on. The other one is still at 20%, 20 minutes elapse, have I go by. That 20-minute one is going to stay on because of the requirement. But then as soon as it receives a signal from the other 2 control zones that it's not detecting occupancy after 20 minutes, it's going to reduce to off because no further occupancy is detected. That zone will follow it, okay? So they're all acting independently, but they're all playing for the same team. So the control shall automatically turn off general lighting in all control zones within 20 minutes after all occupants have left the open office space. I encourage you to leave this at 20 minutes, right? The calibration or commissioning of the lighting control system should be done by the building owner, facility manager, and tenants, right? And that I mean like the fine tuning, where if you have it at 1 minute, right, you might upset some people. No one likes to be at their desk and then start leaving and be like, hey, turn on the lights, okay? So keep that in mind. Just kind of think about how you would use the space. Exemption, where general lighting is turned off by time switch controls complying with section 405, the time switch control section. General lighting in each zone shall turn off or uniformly reduce lighting power to the unoccupied set point of not more than 20%. So basically, you can't, in your control zone, you can't have, Broadway theater productions going on. Okay, can't have all the lights flashing, coming on to different levels. They all have to be uniform. So if they all have to reduce 20% output, they all should have the same fade rate, and they should all be responding, within a second of each other. Okay, it shouldn't be, the first row phase, and then the second row phase, the third row phase. Cool as that could be, we don't want that. Corridors. This is a section that was added in 21, and I don't believe any changes happened in 24. Basically, same thing as before. One thing to note is the exception. It's a little concerning to me. So corridors provided with less than 2-foot candles of illumination on the floor at the darkest point with all lights on. I do not want this to encourage you to do poor lighting design. Okay, just so you don't have to have an occupancy sensor in your corridor. Okay, please. But I also don't. I'm still on the fence on whether or not we should be including occupancy sensors in corridors, but it is a requirement in 2024. Time switch controls. These got updated and a little more flexible. So you don't. There's a lot more instances in the code where if you don't want to put an occupancy sensor for a space, you can get away with a time switch control. Okay. And I mentioned that because I know occupancy sensors are getting a little more costly, more sophisticated, and we're requiring them for more space types. So something you might want to think about is the time switch control. But basically, if you were not required to put an occupancy sensor in a space, then you are required to put a time switch control in, okay? So each area of the building that is not provided with occupancy sensor shall have a time switch control exception. This was reduced. There were 4 exemptions, and it got bumped up to 5 in 21, and then now it's back down to 2 in 24. So luminaires that are required to have specific application controls with section that specifies the specific application controls. And then spaces where patient care is directly provided. Okay. Time switch control functions, you have to comply with all of the following. One that was updated or that was added, programs will automatically turn off lights when the space is scheduled to be unoccupied. So again, this is getting at more granular control, more instances of our lighting system becoming smart, right? So we have luminous lighting controls. It's a network lighting or a network lighting system, and it has access to the building room schedule, and it knows, when the conference room meeting is supposed to attend, etc. You can start using those instances of data to help refine your control operation. The rest of it is pretty much remaining the same. Think lighting schedule. It's pretty typical. Number 7 was added for spaces where schedules are not available. Time switch controls are programmed to schedule that turns off lights not less than 12 hours per day, right? This one's a little tricky. The application for that, mall concourses, sports arena concourses, airport terminals, things that are going to have heavy circulation consistently throughout the day. It's kind of where I would stick to applying that one. Override, that's still typical. Just keep in mind the limit, the area for the override, not larger than 5,000 square feet. Okay, so all the lights within 5,000 square feet can be on one controller. If not, they need to have a separate one. Yeah, it actually calls out the mall concourses, auditoriums, sales. That's kind of the building type application that you're going to see the most benefit from time switch controls. Dimming controls. So this section is completely new, rewritten. It was changed a little bit in 21, and then they just full sended it in 24. So you have to, and this is one I'm kind of on the fence. So we're requiring certain space types to have for the general lighting dimming controls. I don't necessarily quite agree because a lot of these, like I've never really had to twist anyone's arm to be like, hey, you really should put dimming controls in this building or for this space type. It's a occupant comfort, quality control strategy that is very effective. I don't think we should be forcing it for various space types, but that is a change that happens in 24. So just familiarize yourself with these. They're pretty standard. Space is not provided with occupancy sensors, controls complying with section 405.211. That's probably the one to take note of. So again, if you don't have a occupancy sensor control complying with that, then you're gonna have dimming for your space size. So that's kind of how they get everything, in there. Exemption is luminaires controlled by special application controls, complying with that section for controls. So the control function for dimming shall be provided with manual controls that allow lights to be dimmed from full output to 10% of full power or lower, with continuous dimming as well as turning lights off. Manual control shall be provided. Exceptions. Manual dimming control is not required in spaces where high-end trim lighting controls are provided that comply with the following. So if you want to stick with your basic light switch on off, or say you want to stick with the modern version of that, which is, scene 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then high-end trims your new best friend for your control strategy. If not, you're going to have the slider somehow.
So we're just talking at the switch for the resident
Yes.
in their office space.
I'm not sure how it is.
Versus the level of the LLCs, which is still dimming.
Yeah.
So I guess this is just talking about specifically on the switch.
Yeah, specifically have to switch for the control function. So basically the lights, you would have some kind of way. So like, unfortunately, there's kind of a gray area right now. So if I pull out my phone, I can use the app on my phone to control the lights in the IDL. That doesn't technically meet the definition of ready access because I gotta log in, I gotta unlock the phone, I gotta log into the app, I gotta control the space. So yeah, and to be honest, you kind of should be doing high-end trim with LEDs. They're too good at their job, so to speak. They're basically a lot of times too bright. And a lot of buildings I've done audits or retrofits in, I always end up applying a high-end trim. Where it gets unique is for schools, like different teachers have different applications in their classroom that they, or standards that they like for how they teach.
Science versus English.
Yeah, so the science teacher
Labs.
really doesn't have, too much trim. They want it bright. The English teacher, their normal one, I think I 75% is what I trimmed it to, which was crazy. But then I programmed an override scene for her for when they had reading time. So, everything, all the lights went up, but for normal instructional teaching, so I prefer scenes like step dimming. Step dimming digitally is fantastic. Step dimming analog, very cumbersome. But the digital version of that control strategy, I think is very well done. But as far as dimming, yeah, I would do high-end trim if you don't want to deal with dimming and you want to have your basic light switch for scenes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
What is high-end trim?
So high-end trim is, say you have light fixtures installed, they're operating 100% output, and so on the back end facilities says, hey, we're gonna tell the control system that the lights in space 202, classroom 202, say, they're gonna be 90% output, okay? But you, being the professor of classroom 202, I don't tell you that, right? So if you go on to into the light switch or in the app or whatever, and you say, turn the lights on to 100%. For you, you're going to see 100%. The system is only going to put it at 90%. It's going to tell you 90 is the new 100.
So it didn't change anything.
No, it did. So for you, it's going to 90%, but it's telling you, hey, I'm actually at 100, even though it's not. So you're banking 10% year round while it's operating. That's the benefit of high-end trim. And typically, I've seen high-end trim used most in retrofits because it's a one-to-one lighting replacement for fluorescent T8, T12s. And so because of that, LEDs are too good at their job. So a lot of the spaces are overlit. And so rather than having them constantly dim down, dim down, dim down, it's like, hey, let's permanently trim off the high end of it by 5, 10, 15, 20%. And so
the
every
space
time,
isn't quite as bright because people get headaches because you put in the new fixture and it's giving out more lumens than is needed for the space. So
yeah, its luminous efficacy is too good. And so to get around that, basically, we're just going to say we'll trim off 10% output. So it's really at 90%, so it's less dim. But that's occupant comfort. Energy efficiency wise, we care about that because that's 10% of our load that is never realized, that we don't ever use as long as that control strategy is maintained. And so that's 365. You don't have to do anything.
If ever wants to, if in a situation ever comes around where you now need that 10% back,
You have it.
now it's 110%,
No, just
because the new 100 was 90.
yeah. So basically,
I'm turning it up to 11,
Yeah.
but you got 11 at the beginning, right?
Yeah,
You just
right.
turned it down.
It's just
but you can
going
turn
back.
it back up.
Right, yeah.
the perception of the occupant might be that it's 110,
Yeah.
but the system is like, no, it's 100.
It's 100, right? Yeah, yeah. No, I'm sorry.
Daylight responsive controls. I'd like to apologize to everyone about this section. I did not write it. Please don't kill the messenger. Okay. It's from what my interactions with daylighting on projects, I know a lot of people are not going to like this. Okay. So we still have side lit zones, still have top lit zones. We're calling them daylight zones now instead of just zones. We also added atriums as well. But within our side lit daylight zones, we have a primary and a secondary. And the way code words this is very confusing, so I apologize. So spaces with a total more of 75 watts, so we're still concerned about the amount of wattage in an area. Within our primary site lit zone, and there's a special section, I'll go through some visual images, don't worry. Spaces with a total of more than 150 watts of general lighting within site lit zones complying with it. All right, so we got a primary, and this is our primary with our secondary. Okay, I know it's confusing, I'm sorry. And then top lit daylight zone, the only thing that got changed is the 75 watts. Okay, so this used to be 150. This didn't exist, and this used to be 150. Okay, so the single zone got cut in half, and then the cumulative of the two zones 150. Okay, exemptions. Spaces in healthcare facilities where patient care is directly provided. Lighting that is required to have specific application control, you're going to see that exemption a lot. Enclosed office spaces less than 250 square feet. I imagine I'm going to see a lot more offices at exactly that square footage for various reasons. The exemptions, so this was an exemption in 2018 that basically said, hey, why do I have to do daylighting if I installed high efficiency LED light fixtures and I reduce a significant amount of my power versus what is allotted or required of me? That's gone in 2024, right? And to be honest with you, it was very hard to do, so this is a very complicated equation and confusing. But so there are new exemptions and requirements. So here's kind of a way for, because we'll give you the slides. I just want it all on one, but I'm going to go through all of these. Okay. So for your site lit zone, all right, it's the floor area adjacent to the vertical penetration that complies with all the following. So the way that's written, you would kind of think that every single vertical penetration of the wall is required to have a daylight zone. It's not correct. Okay. I want you to think about this as a checklist. All right. So first, we're going to go with the area of the penetration is not less than 24 square feet. If it's not less than 24 square feet, okay, check. Move to number 2. distance from the fenestration to any building or geological formation that would block access to daylight. This got updated, is greater than 1/2 of the height. It used to just be the half. Now it will be 1/2 of the height from the bottom of the fenestration, so bottom window sill, to the top of the building or geological formation. Okay, so if you put that into that small equation and it's okay, then you move to number 3. The visual transmission of the fenestration is not less than 0.2. And 2018, that's where you stop, right? It was just 3 checks and you'd be good to go. And if you met all of those requirements, you would have to. If you didn't satisfy all those requirements, you wouldn't have to. Now, this is a big change from 2018 to 24. The projection factor comes into play. Dr. Woods talked about that earlier, about the building envelope. And so this deals with overhang, right? So this was, the projection factor was a way for you to increase your vertical fenestration, your window to wall ratio, right? But you would not be punished, or I guess say not punished, but compensated later on down the code compliance that, you know, hey, I reduced daylight entering my building to reduce my solar heat gain coefficient so I can get more blazing, et cetera, the impact on my heating and cooling loads. Oh, by the way, it's still fully daylit though. Even though I'm blocking out that sun and taking, you know, the reduction in the loads, it's still daylit. You don't get to do that in 24 anymore. Okay. So 24, you have to use the equation 4.4 in section, it's 402's envelope, right?
So
Yeah. Is not greater than 1 for fenestration oriented 45 degrees less from true north, and not greater than 1.5 for all other orientations. Okay. Don't worry, I got slides on that. So if you satisfy all 4 of these requirements, then you are required to draw a side lit daylight zone for that space, or that vertical fenestration in that space. Okay, so you got to do that to all your vertical fenestration for windows, clear stories, sawtooths, skylights, etc. Basically, you're doing that. So you determined that you had to draw it. How do you draw it? This is how. Okay, I'm not going to explain that. I'm just going to show you. Okay. So here's the 2018. Right, so you would take the bottom of the window sill to the top sill, or sorry, the floor plate to the top sill. That's your H height. You extend that laterally, that's your distance. And then going side to side would be 2 feet to, unless there's a full height wall obstruction, right? Then you would stop. Okay, so this is how 2018 wants you to draw your daylight zone, and there's 1 daylight zone. There's 2024, that's changing. It's no longer 2 feet, it's 0.5 times our height. How we calculate the height has not changed. How we apply it has though. So our primary zone is 1 of our height into our space. And then our secondary daylight zone is 2 times our height into our space. It's pretty simple, but just keep that in mind. And so that's pretty much how you draw it. The full height wall exception still applies. And then applying 0.5 times our height to get our distance from the edge of the windows. Okay, so here's an example. So we have our layout because we care about how much wattage is in our zone, right? Because again, we determined that we had to draw it, but now we have to determine whether or not we need to put a photo control sensor in there, because we have to determine if it's 75 or 150 watts. Okay. So here, let's just say we have our lighting layout like this. Please take it with a grain of salt. It's not an official layout. Okay. But so in our primary daylight zone A, we got 112 watts. That's greater than 75. So we will need a photo control sensor in here to control these lights. And then primary or secondary daylight zone A is also 112 watts. So, but there were that when the text, it didn't say secondary, it said side lit zone. So it's including both. So together we have 224 watts. So this will also need a photo control sensor. They'll be controlled separately. So 1 photo control, 2nd photo control. I know a lot of you are not going to like that. Okay. Primary daylight zone B, 84 watts. Secondary daylight zone 56. So photo control, no photo control. Okay, that's because we're adding up the wattage of our fixtures, and this example, sorry, we're doing 28 watts each for a fixture. Okay, and then you still got the typical exemption or loophole, as I like to refer to it, for cardinal orientation. So, like I said, photo control for this space and this space, and that zone is good for all of the other zones, right? So this primary zone can control this primary zone. We had another primary zone C down here. It could do that, etc. But the secondary zone has to be controlled independently of the primary zone. But the secondary zone can control all the secondary zones. Does that make sense? Okay. So, and then you are permitted. So say we have, this wasn't here. Sorry, you can't see me camera. But so we have this section of the building, right? It actually extends further. There's no full height wall. We continue this, right? So this is a different cardinal orientation. Take 45 degrees. And so some of these over here can be controlled by the photo controls over here. I do not recommend that from occupant comfort and just general trying to maintain uniform illumination of your fixtures, right?
You got two separate spaces, complete separate spaces.
And no, they could be.
If you
I
got,
was just saying, if we get rid of that full head wall,
oh, if you got, okay,
you
okay.
get rid of it and say it's a
I see.
full office plan,
All right.
right? Because say that's north, that's east, south, west, right? You can have some of the fixtures oriented on the north being controlled by the control sensor on the east facade. That's oriented towards the east facade,
Yeah.
within 45 degrees and a certain amount. I don't recommend that because that's kind of a way to kind of reduce the number of sensors in the space. But again, if you increase the amount of sensors, you increase the amount of data, which increases your resolution, so you understand what's kind of going on in the space. And as sun, moves throughout the day, it changes from east to west. So those levels are different. So you kind of want those zones controlled differently because the daylight levels are different.
You have light coming on in one area and not in another, just because the sun has moved.
So, and if a lot of this is confusing to you, where you need to put in and do all this math, you could just do luminaire level lighting controls, and then you're good. Okay. So here's that equation, or number 2 for our obstruction distance. So basically what it's saying is, hey, if you got a skyscraper right next to your small office and it's shading you for most of the day throughout the year, why should we be giving you credit for daylight harvesting? Or why should we be forcing you to do daylight harvesting when you clearly don't have access to sufficient daylight? Okay. So yeah, here's an example of that. Height is 40 feet, distance is 30 feet. So if you do that equation, 30 feet is greater than 20 feet, so daylight is not blocked. Okay, very, very basic. Okay. So again, do 1 through 4 checks first to identify which spaces you will need to draw a sighted zone, and then determine which zones are required to have the photo control sensor installed, and which zones are being controlled by which sensors, whatnot. Please, I know a lot of you do this, but please consider adding just one additional photo control cell, please. Just because, just more uniform illumination response to daylight levels, please. So that's the side lit zone. We have the top lit zone. Again, so a lot of this, I kept it as top lit zone, sorry, but technically for 2024, it's top lit, day lit zone. Okay, so just keep in mind of that language change. This one did not change at all. So you're good to go for that one. Still the same process, checks before drawing, because it's the top zone, so it's typically a skylight or a clear story. You want to check for obstructions that are going to interfere with the summer solstice by any buildings or geological formations. I recommend weatherspark.com for solar angles. It is getting a lot harder to obtain climate relevant data because the databases are not being as well maintained right now. The other thing to take a look at is the effective aperture. So basically the visual transmission and then the roof penetration and the area of that roof opening is not less than 0.008. You have to try to not be in compliance with this, okay? Um, don't overthink that, okay? Here's the equation for it. And then again, it's not called skylight, it's called roof fenestration assembly. It means skylight, okay? But basically this didn't change. All right, so instead of height, this goes off of ceiling height. Okay, but then we're still applying that as a factor. So 0.7 times our ceiling height is how we're gonna draw our daylight zone for our top lit daylight or top daylit zone. The other one is a rooftop monitor. So same thing, except this takes into consideration ceiling height and the actual height to the bottom seal of our rooftop monitor. And then we have 0.25 of our height determining the width of that for that reach of our zone. Oh yeah, just small change, but basically same thing. Atriums. So new section added in 2024. Daylight zones at atrium spaces shall be established at the top floor surrounding the atrium and at the floor of the atrium space and not the intermediate floors. Basically, first floor that touches and deals with the atrium and the ground floor where the atrium stops. Here's what that looks like. Okay, so very, very similar. So we have two ceiling height variables, top floor and ground floor. Okay. And daylight that makes sense. We're trying to predict the effectiveness at the first floor and then the fall off rate to the bottom floor. And those should be, in my opinion, the lights here should be controlled independently of the ones down here. That's just common sense. So daylight responsive control function. Basically, so how are we going to control those lights? So basically anything in a top lit zone versus side lit zone, those have to be controlled independently, right? You don't get to use both. One sensor for both those zones. They each need to have their own sensor. Lights in the primary side lit daylight zone shall be controlled independently of lights in the secondary side lit daylight zone. Okay, so you can have one sensor for almost all of your primary zones, and you can have one sensor for almost all of your secondary zones. I say almost because that's a variable. It's on the orientation of your space, how big it is. Daylight responsive controls within each space shall be configured so that they can be calibrated within that space by authorized personnel. I have no idea what they mean by authorized personnel, because with a lot of lighting systems I'm dealing with now, I'm giving individual occupants access to override and change their lights. Think of it like here at the university, right? We have classrooms with computers in them, and I can log in and will load my personal desktop. But if I log out and Dr. Woods logs in, it loads in his personal desktop because he has his credentials. I got my own credentials. That's what network lighting allows us to do. It allows us to give everyone their own lighting credentials so that they can create their own lighting profile or lighting user database assumptions, etc. So I don't know what they mean by authorized personnel. Take that with a grain of salt. Basically, I kind of, it's like facility manager, right? Because with network lighting and
controls.
Yeah.
The controls guy.
Yeah, controls guy, commissioner. Basically have someone with IT admin level access, right? That's what I kind of consider the authorized personnel, is the person who you're giving those credentials to. That's the authorized person. Calibration mechanisms shall be in location with ready access. I understand that for our authorized personnel, but I don't know about the rest of our building occupants. I don't want them calibrating the lights. So, daylight responsive controls shall dim lights continuously from full output to 15% of full output or lower. Okay. Daylight responsive controls shall be configured to completely shut off all controlled lights. Okay. And then this paragraph here, basically saying we need to have some hierarchy between all the control strategies we've introduced: occupancy sensors, time switch, and now daylight photo controls. So basically, if a space is empty, right, and occupancy says it's empty, and daylight says, hey, there's no daylight, like the cloud passed over, right? So we get no daylight, and it's like, hey, I should be raising the illumination levels. occupancy sensor has the chain of command authority to be like, no, stand down, you're not doing anything. Okay, it's fine. Wait until I give the order, i.e. I detect someone entering the space. Then it will go to not more than 50% of full output, remember, 50%. And then daylight will come in and be like, hey, hold on, boss. We don't need 50% because I got 80% from natural daylight, so we're going to knock that down to 20%. And if a building occupant or tenant wants, they can override all of that completely and just hit the switch and say, actually turn the electric lights on to 100%. I don't care how much daylight there is. Okay. So here's the exemption or kind of loophole, I say. Silent daylight zones in accordance with the appropriate section, facing different cardinal orientations within 45 degrees of due north, east, southwest, shall be controlled independently of each other. Okay. Specific application controls. So here's that exemption you've been seeing in all the other sections. Here is where it is. The following lighting shall be controlled by occupancy sensor, complying with occupancy sensor section, or time switch controls with the time switch control section. In addition, a manual control shall be provided to control such lighting separately from the general lighting in space. So, i.e., lighting for a china cabinet, lighting for displaying artwork on the wall, things like that, accent lighting that is not considered general. Okay. So, an example in this room would be those fixtures with the wood bends and stuff. Those are accent lighting, right? They're not contributing to the general lighting nation level. Actually, this display and accent, including lighting in display cases, supplemental task lighting, desk light, under cabinet light, things like that. Lighting equipment that is for sale or demonstration in lighting education. For non-visual applications such as plant growth or food warming, shall be controlled by time switch controls. I definitely agree with that. Time switch controls is perfect for plant growth and for food warming because those are different standards. You need different rates of intensity for certain periods. So it works perfect for those. Task lighting for medical and dental purposes that is in addition to general lighting shall be provided with a manual control. So, you know, the portable sun they got at the dentist's office that they put over your face and you gotta wear some sunglasses, you know, that thing. Okay, so that's additional task lighting. Lighting, this is a new one I really don't like, or I guess I should say I don't understand it. Lighting integrated into range hoods and exhaust fans shall be controlled independently of fans. Why? I'm not entirely sure. I don't know why it needs to be independently controlled. It's just basic task lighting. I mean, so yeah, just keep that in mind for your kitchen, commercial kitchen applications, etc. Manual controls. How are we doing on time? Where required by code, manual controls for lights shall comply with the following. They shall be in a location with ready access to occupants. So again, ready access for occupants means I don't have to climb over a chair or a table. I don't have to pass a quiz, input a code. I just get to start accessing the system and using it. They shall be located where the control lights are visible or shall identify the area served by lights and indicate their status. This is one that's kind of interesting. I've only run into the problem once for a building where what I like to refer to the light switch as a light remote, where you can take it off the wall and walk around with it, basically use it like a remote. The issue with that is you got to put the remote back on the wall so that it becomes a wall switch again. Otherwise, you got to find the remote. We all know how fun it was looking for the TV remotes as children. You know, telling your sibling, no, you're sitting on, get up, I don't believe you. So, yeah.
The one for our office is on my desk right now, just FYI.
So it's not
I think
necessarily
it moved last night.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a problem for us. Like we got the light remote walking around, but anytime I can log in on my desktop, change the lights. I can pull out my phone, open the app, change the lights. But I know not everyone has that system kind of set up. So just keep in mind, you know, the wall switch, my opinion, should stay attached to the wall. If you want a portable light switch, use an app on your phone. or have a iPad or netbook or, you know, something that has the lighting, have that is the portable version of it, okay? So here's the remaining sections for exterior lighting control. Very similar applications, just for the exterior. I guess any questions on any of the interior control strategies before I get into the exterior and run through that in 10 minutes? All right. Okay. Exterior is pretty straightforward. Not a whole lot of changes. Exemptions, lighting for covered vehicle entrances where buildings, to buildings where required for eye adaptations, and lighting controlled from within dwelling units, right? So things like your back porch light, stuff like that. Whoa. Is that an animation? Oh, I don't know. Our AI is doing something or whatnot, so I did not put that in. Lights shall be automatically turned off when daylight is present that satisfies lighting needs. Pretty self-explanatory. Building facade and landscape lighting. This was a great change in my opinion. Just small technical change for the words. Building facade or landscape lighting, this used to be called decorative lighting. Sorry, the title was renamed. Shall automatically shut off from not later than 1 hour after building or business closing. Okay, this is a good one because a lot of times people forget that just because the business is closed doesn't mean the building is closed. We have custodians, janitors, you know, people after hours that, you know, facility managers that make our buildings run and, you know, kind of operate in the background. So small language change, but in my opinion, a great one. Closing not earlier than 1 hour before building or business opening. Okay, so you can choose the building operating hours or the business operating hours. Sometimes those align, not all the time though. Lighting setback. Lighting that is not controlled in accordance with C405272 shall comply with the following. Be controlled, the total wattage of such lighting is automatically reduced by not less than 50% by selectively switching off or dimming luminaires at one of the following times. From not later than midnight to earlier than 6 a.m., from not later than 1 hour after building or business closing to not earlier than 1 hour before or business opening. During any time where activity has not been detected for 15 minutes or more. Luminaires serving exterior parking areas having a rated input wattage of greater than 40 watts and a mounting height of 24 feet or less above the ground shall be controlled so the total wattage of such lighting is automatically reduced by not less than 50% anytime where activity has not been detected for 15 minutes or more. No more than 15 or 1500 watts of lighting power shall be controlled together. Okay.
There's a lot of knots in that sentence.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to go through it. This is kind of the big change that happened for exterior lighting controls. So we're controlling the rated input wattage, not greater than 40 watts, and we're controlling the mounting height now. So 24 feet. This used to be very big variable ranges that you could have. Shall be controlled so that the total wattage of such lighting is automatically reduced by not less than 50%. So you have to, basically, we're adding occupancy sensors for our parking lot. Our
But
exterior.
greater than 50%.
Yes.
Okay.
So we don't want it full off, right? Because you know how I told you, like in the open office, you know, area, we kind of want all the lights to come on. People kind of get scared. Think of a horror movie. That definitely is going to happen in a parking lot. Okay, if you have a just completely dark parking lot and only one corner of it lit up, like I'm not walking through that.
No, bad people get there.
So yeah, it's not happening.
But you're talking about reduced by not less, so that means it's
So that's why, yes. So not full off, but to 50%.
or more or less.
Yes, so you can go to 0, which I do not recommend,
Right.
even for the case of energy efficiency.
But we're going to say 50 here.
Yeah, occupant comfort. So I would do right at the line, 50%. I would not mess with that one. Where activity has not been detected for 15 minutes or more, and your control zones are limited not by area, but by wattage. So 1500 watts shall be controlled, or the light shall be controlled together, no more than 1500. Okay. So that's how you determine your occupancy control zones for your exterior lights. I recommend having the highest sensitivity for your occupancy sensor if you do this, or if you're required to do this, and to stay at 50% and go to the maximum of 50. Like, don't try to be energy efficient on this part. In my opinion, this area of energy efficiency is misguided, butting up against occupant comfort and safety. You can also do exterior time switch controls. They are almost the exact same as the interior time switch controls. Demand responsive lighting. This is a new one. So this is not required for 24. It just has it defined the controls function, but you'll see before this C405.2.8 is reserved. That's where the requirements are going to come for the next code cycle whenever they actually added it. So basically, for a lot of the commercial light, I really don't fully understand. Like, I really wish this was tied to square footage for the commercial building types rather than just in general, because of what LEDs are doing to our kilowatt hour loads. So yeah, just have it here for your reference. It's not required, but if you do want to implement demand responsive lighting controls, I would recommend following the guidelines for this section. Probably one of my least favorite areas, interior parking area lighting control. This is a new one. Basically, we're adding occupancy sensors to our interior parking, garage, lots, etc. And as you just heard me rant about the exterior parking surface lot for requiring occupancy sensors, same argument, same principle. In my opinion, a lot worse, because the parking garage is more confined. There's less area for you to kind of avoid someone. So you know, we've all walked in parking garages, right? Going from, you know, your car to the elevator to the stair. There's really a lot of them. There's not dedicated pedestrian access ways called out, or, you know, sidewalks, so to speak, for pedestrian circulation. It's all for cars. So messing with the lights in the interior parking garage, I'm vehemently against. Also, like, if it's on the perimeter and there's no architectural aesthetic obstructing, then you're supposed to have daylight harvesting controls for that, which is insane. So yeah, this is unfortunately a requirement. I believe my recommendation to DOML was that it gets stricken. Whether or not that happens, to be determined. But
It's in the red lines.
it's in the red line, so I'm pretty confident we won't have to deal with this this section. So lastly, to wrap up, slightly out of time, just for the code changes in general, here is the website. Go to for DOPL, go to notice of rulemaking, proposed rule PDF. In that PDF, this is the section you want. Of that section, this is the subsection you're interested in, or if you just want to type in a page number, it's 363. And then I also recommend the perspective analysis PDF, specifically number 6. It's an interesting read. With that, that's kind of all I have for you. We're at time. I apologize, I had to go over the 2024 stuff, but there's additional stuff about fenestration. I'll make the slides available. You can find a lot of this on our YouTube channel already as well. So any questions? I just go into detail about the other sections that deal with daylight controls and exemptions and how you can kind of get a little bit more out of it. But yeah, so nothing too critical or